questions from the audience on innovation, anything that you've heard this morning? Yes.
Thank you. Amanda, I thought you were just amazing. My name's Dana. What do you do for fun? That's what I want to know.
What do I do for... I'm a musical theatre addict, so if I was a triple threat, I would be off on Broadway. So that's what I do for fun, amongst other things.
I really think you should be on stage. Seriously, you're amazing.
There was not one mention of intellectual property. Why not?
Anyone want to take that? Stephen?
I must have put you to sleep. Actually, I did mention it in there. We have our proprietary software platform, but at the same time, whatever we build for companies, we carve out that IP. I think the IP is very important, and what we've seen is there that the companies want to engage us, need to understand and want to know how they manage that IP.
Thank you all for your fantastic presentations. I'm just curious about, given we know that there's a fatigue around making decisions, at what point when you're working on an innovation and making it come to fruition, do you hit that wall where it becomes too hard and you think, oh, let's forget about it and not continue with this? Is that generally the same point in most projects, or does it vary depending on what you're working on?
Marcus?
I think someone made a comment about bringing in a lot of ideas but not sort of obliging yourself to implement all of them. I think that's very important. I don't think there's one set answer to that question. I think it's very dependent on what's the idea, what's the context, what's the people working on it, what are the alternatives. So the only point I would make is just be alert to changing course, to stopping altogether, to going back to the beginning, and just be flexible-minded. That's a high-level comment, but I don't think there's one simple answer because ideas are all different and the situations are all different as well.
Thank you. Just this way.
I found this morning really inspiring. My question, though, is around the rooster. I work with teams of people, and I'm curious to know, how do they respond when they win the rooster? Is it an individual or is it the idea that wins the rooster? How do people respond to being the biggest failure?
It's an individual mess up. So an individual receives it and it's a joke. The first cock up or screw up was actually by the CEO. So they kind of set the stage. But I think what that did, it broke the back on making mistakes. And so celebrating failure, I mean, what does that really mean? It's a bit sort of cliche, but I think the point is there that it's created an environment where you're not afraid to make mistakes, or if you do, put your hand up, made a mistake, learn from it and move on. I think that's the main message. We do try and target certain people. 2 weeks ago, one of the girls got it and we gave her a hard time.
I love it.
Only because of the mistake.
There's another tool that's used by a different organisation and it's called the How Fascinating tool. So if I can just get you to all practice this as well. If you all go, okay, so anytime anybody makes a mistake in this particular organisation, they just walk around and go, how fascinating! They may punctuate it with another word or two, but okay, so it's okay to make that mistake.
Christine, is that okay in the boardroom?
Absolutely, I'll see you there in a couple of Wednesdays. Thank you.
Maybe at Marcus, but perhaps at banking in general. How do we put a value in accountancy terms on the potential of an idea?
Yeah, it's a good question. Banks are orientated towards counting things. I talked about our Innovation Academy, that where we collect ideas and socialise them and vote on them and then select some. We do, a lot of what I talked about was about culture and how people behave and approach their work, but at the end there is a commercial purpose there, that's what we're there to achieve. So we do test all our ideas in quite normal ways, by forecasting cash flows and calculating the net present value. So I think in the context of a commercial organisation, you need to find a way to do that, and on that front, we just use quite normal methods to evaluate ideas.
Sorry. Just having spent 20 years in banking, I think the whole sort of exercise around ideating or taking an idea from that initial seed stage to some point, not completion, is if we move away from those financial KPIs, how many ideas, what was the actual revenue we're aiming for, I think there that allows you to focus on more generating that idea. And I think the other thing is if you can sort of unlock that capability and then experiment, at some point you can get it to early stage prototype, and at that point you can test that prototype against your market base, friendlies. Once it starts to get traction, it looks like it has more potential, I would suggest there that then you start to bring in more robust measurements and commercial measurements.
I'd also say probably another question to ask is what's the cost of not innovating, which is perhaps sort of quite a relevant question for a lot of industries. I know a lot of our clients are working in categories that are in natural decline of 3%, 10% or more per annum, and it's a really high cost of not innovating. Look at companies like Kodak, it's quite a high cost for them.
I suppose the question behind the question is that intangible assets in businesses, how do you value those people who are generating the revenue to make the business great? They're actually quite realised on.
So how do you value the people?
Well, the people generating the ideas sit on the liabilities, probably not the assets, probably the balance sheet, traditionally in accountancy.
That's probably where I differ from an accountant, because I never think about people as liabilities rather than assets. The thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is just about encouraging people and valuing them as people. I don't sort of put financial numbers on our people. I value all the energy and ability they bring. And my whole point really earlier was about trying to help people to express that in the richest way that they can. I think I'd just rather focus on that rather than sort of keeping score on what they've done in a financial way.
We've been working with a group, the Hargraves Institute, and they've got a way of recognising catalysts. And so we'll be over the upcoming 2 years, we'll be looking to certify those people as catalysts within the business so that you recognise their skills in facilitating the innovation and the actual idea generation phase, and recognising them formally as an asset to the business.
Thank you. Any more questions?
The shoot boom, I like that. But what I was going to ask to all of you is, with the idea of proving it wrong first, do you all use that, when you do innovations, and do you find that it saves you a lot of time of trying to do it the opposite way? Is it a big time factor where you say proving it wrong before you prove it right?
Look, I think it worked for ClickView, but it might not work for everybody. And in some cases, as Amantha said, you want to challenge the assumptions rather than trying to kick an idea down. But I think if you're a small business with relatively limited resources, it does provide a template to test things before you start investing heavily in them. And you're right, you might not try to shoot it down, you might try and prove it up rather than take the positive view, but it's that staged process that I think Coke and CBA are both using that's really important to test and retest before you're really convinced that you need to put time and money into it.
I think the other thing that I would say is we don't do things on small scale within Coke, so we don't get out of bed for less than 25,000 physical cases. It's just not worth it for us. But when I was in Europe, we launched coconut water in Paris, and we had 4 trucks, and that was it. And four sales reps with iPads, and that was the way we tested the market. So there's different ways to prove what you were doing. You did it in Paris, and you did it in London, then you did it in Barcelona, and then if it worked, then you rolled it out. So you can't afford to not do things. You can't afford not to participate, and it's better to have a small stab at it before expanding rather than sitting there hypothesising about whether all the things that could not work for it.
Just to add, there's free ways to actually go out and test your marketplace, right? So if you look at some of the lean startup methodologies. If you want to start a business and you want to test it against a specific segment, there's tools like LaunchRock, which is a one-page web page, which is free. And what you do is you can say, this product coming soon. If you're interested, send me your email address and I'll let you know when it's coming. So in essence, all you've done, you can leverage your Facebook contacts or whatever else, but for a 5 minutes piece of work with no cost, you can actually test a segment, even if it's just a very small segment to you, around the interest in that. So that there are a number of ways you can actually experiment and test before you put a big outlay in.
Good morning. I'm Chris Johnson, Commonwealth Bank as well. I guess this question's probably for you, Amantha. What's probably the one or two most common basic innovations that you see could be implemented to a business? Like, what's the most common ones that you would find?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that.
That could be implemented into a business that you see a lot across a broad spectrum. Like, what would be probably the most one or two?
Yeah, look, I think something that we see a lot of, funnily enough, is innovation being over-resourced, and also thinking that you can do kind of, transformative innovation, as I think Marcus referred to it as, or, breakthrough or disruptive kind of innovation, starting with a business case, which is just flawed thinking, because there are just way too many assumptions that you have to make if you're doing something that's really disrupting a market. So, I think as Joe was saying, using, the Lean Startup by Eric Ries is a fantastic read if you're trying you're trying to find a way to do innovation, but you're kind of resource poor. The way we sort of work that prototyping phase with clients is treating it like a science experiment. So you've got your idea that has made it through to a certain point in the process, and then thinking about, well, what hypotheses do you have to think it will be successful in market or not, running experiments and then iterating that idea based on the outcome of essentially what we would term a science experiment. So I think that's something that, we think is a pretty good lean way of doing innovation that we don't see too many organisations doing. So that would be one thing. Yeah. No, not many with the butter sticks, no.
I'm very conscious of the time. Can you please thank our speakers again? One final thank you to Thurnham Tees again, who have partnered to present this morning. So thank you, Lynn and Tara and staff. Thanks very much. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the view on your way out and be inspired. Thank you.